Hello everyone and welcome to a week of Linux news, the 22nd of January 2017. I want to look back at Linux distribution review I made this week, Ultimate Edition 5.1. It really was a mess with broken themes, and I'm glad to see a few of you guys shared my thoughts on it. Looking back, perhaps I should have passed on reviewing it. The next distro I'm looking at is a complete contrast. OB Revenge. It is based on Arch Linux and uses the OpenBox desktop. The developer has brought something a bit more unique to the table, and for the cherry on top of the pudding, I mentioned a couple of minor issues in the Google Plus community page, and the developer responded within 1 hour, thanking me for the feedback and stated he will be working on resolving the issues. Wow, quality customer service right there. I look forward to producing a full review later in the week. Onwards with the news. It's going to be a bit hardware orientated this week. CompuLab have launched a new fanless PC named Intense PC3 IPC3, which runs Linux Mint on a dual-core Kaby Lake i3 or i7 CPU. It's classed as an industrial PC, but honestly I think the style is simple enough that it wouldn't look out of place as a home PC. The dimensions are 19 by 16 by 4 centimeters, and the case is an all-metal ruggedized unit, which is shaped to passively cool the 15-watt CPU. Linux Gizmos have written an article on the new IPC3. Like most Kaby Lake boards we have seen, the IPC3 supports Intel's dual-core, low-power U-series, Core i5 and i7 processors. This is a bare-bone device without preloaded OS, but it supports Linux and Windows. CompuLab lists Linux Mint 18 Cinnamon as its official Linux. The Israeli company has collaborated with Linux Mint community in selling special Mintbox versions of its FitLit mini PCs with preloaded Linux Mint. The IPC3 can be pre-ordered now from CompuLab, starting from $693 for the IPC3 i5 version, listed as available soon, and starting from $829 for the new IPC3 i7, which will ship within 5 weeks. Base prices don't include RAM, hard drive, OS, shipping, duty or VAT. I've included a link in the description to Linux Gizmo's article where you can check out the rest of the specs. On the other end of the spectrum for Linux computers, we have new releases of Endless cheap computers which will be shipping to the United States. Specs for the new Mission Mini and Mission 1 are lower than the CompuLab IPC3. The choice is a 1.5 GHz ARM processor with 2 GB of RAM, which costs $129, and a 2.16 GHz Intel Celeron processor, which costs $259. The systems ship with a custom Linux distribution called Endless OS. The cases Endless have designed look beautiful with the wooden and I'm guessing plastic. Nice pictures showing the device in use as well. These simple computers would appeal more to basic family use for web browsing, office applications, and simple gaming. With the Linux OS, it will certainly deliver a fast, usable system. Of course, they are never going to compete with a custom-built system, but not everyone has the skills or time to build a custom computer. I think the unique style could certainly win a lot of less technically minded customers. Actually, I like the style and would be tempted, but the spec is a bit too low for my requirements. I might have a look at Endless OS sometime. OS Technics have written a guide on how to check password complexity, and this actually precedes my next video very nicely, which is how to crack the 12+ character passwords. The general advice given here by OS Technics with using the cracklib check tool is not to use a dictionary password. Yes, that is valid, although there is a little bit more to it. Like you can use a 4 dictionary word long password mixed with upper, lowercase letters, including numbers and punctuation, and it will be able to withstand attack for months or even years. Consider how valuable the data is that you are protecting and base your password complexity off that, or use a password manager. OS Technics mention a valid point about not using actual answers in security questions because all too often, companies storing the data do so in clear text. Actually, a point they haven't mentioned is that most people share the exact same data in their social media profile. Mother's maiden name, date of birth, and town you grew up in is data that most sheeple are all too willing to share with the world. eBay have been bugging me for ages to fill in security questions, but I'm refusing. Why? Because they don't store passwords in hash or bcrypt form. I'm guessing that's because of the limits they impose, and they've already lost everyone's password data at least once before. Why should I believe that they store the answers to security questions in a strong enough manner? I don't. So I won't give them any more data. A strong enough password is good enough for me. Softpedia report that Oracle have released an update to VirtualBox. Both VirtualBox 5.1.14 and VirtualBox 5.0.32 are bug fix releases that only add various improvements to the VirtualBox Machine Manager, Graphical User Interface, VBox SVC process, OVF and NVMe support, as well as platform-specific changes, such as better support for the upcoming Linux 4.10 kernel for Linux hosts. I'm not sure if it was a coincidence, but when I ran the VirtualBox Manager yesterday, I didn't suffer a KWin crash. It used to happen every single time I went to the guest OS settings. Although since KDE Plasma 5.8, the severity of crashes has reduced to the point of suffering a full screen redraw and a pop-up box in the corner informing me of a crash. Yeah, that's it really. No data has been lost and I carry on working as though nothing has happened. I only picked up the update to VirtualBox yesterday, so it's too early to say if the issue has been solved for me. OMG Ubuntu have written an article on new plans for the open source image editor GIMP version 2.10. It will contain a new image processing framework called the Generic Graphics Library, or GEGL for short. There are 5 new theme colours for the user interface. Unified Transform combines the rotation, scaling, skewing and perspective adjustment options into a single tool, Warp Transform. It replaces the old iWarp plugin and works directly on images, as does the new scaling, rotating and perspective correction tool, Handle Transform. Updates to various tools will also feature, including new blend, align and move tools. The text tool will work more like Photoshop's. Another major change is how the app handles linear or gamma corrected workflows and layer modes. I'm certainly interested to see what the brand new version of GIMP will be like, although I have to admit I'm not a huge user of GIMP. I consider GIMP more of an image editor rather than a creator, and I consider Inkscape more of an image creator rather than an editor. Most of my imaging work, especially for my YouTube channel, is based around image creation. OMG Ubuntu have also included details on how to install the latest development build of GIMP 2.9 in Ubuntu by adding a Launchpad repository. As always, links to these articles are in the video description. A couple of weeks ago I mentioned about the new version of Inkscape, version 0.92, and it featured a change on the pixels per inch sizing to conform with new CSS standards. Well, it turns out that change has had an enormous impact for the artist of Pepper and Carrot comics, which they've shown severely affects the line spacing. No big deal, right? It only affects a couple of images. Oh, it affects 10,804 images. Ouch! And on that note, that concludes the week of Linux news. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you all later.